So I am Gwendolyn Wright from the Samuel DuBois Cook Center, and we want to welcome you to our conference and book launch on the pandemic divide, how COVID increased inequality in America. And I think if someone asked me, the star of the show is not here yet, and that's the book, but it is expected to be here sometime today. And for those of you who are really curious and would like to purchase it, we will have it available. We're hoping there was a mix-up with the truck. It was in the warehouse. Truck went there and somehow didn't get the books and left. So we're working to get that rectified. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And my colleagues are here and my co-editors of the Pandemic Divide. And so we're going to kind of give you a brief overview of the conference as well as the book, and we have a video trailer that accompanies our remarks. And I do have one change in the program. Dr. Eugene Richardson is ill and will not be able to be here, so we are just going to adjust the schedule accordingly. So I want to introduce my colleagues. Professor Darity, William Darity, we affectionately call him Sandy. He is director of the Samuel DuBois Cook Center. And my other colleague, Mr. Lucas Hubbard, who is our writer and part of our communications team. And so we're going to share just a few words about the book launch and the conference.
So good morning. Yeah. I'm very, very pleased to have the opportunity to open the Pandemic Divide Conference, which is an opportunity for us to launch a book that is a product of research that has been done by scholars who are associated with the Samuel DuBois Cook Center on Social Equity. I think approximately 2 years ago, as the pandemic was deepening in the United States, Gwen Wright, who is our Director for Strategic Initiatives and Collaborations at the Cook Center, said, we have a lot of talented researchers who are doing extremely valuable work about questions concerning health disparities as well as economic inequality. Why don't we take a look at that in the context of putting together a book project that will capture the range of research interest and strengths that we have at the Cook Center. I thought it was a terrific idea, and so the consequence or the outcome is the book that's being published by the Duke University Press, which is called The Pandemic Divide: How COVID Increased Inequality in America. One of the central aspects of the book is thinking about the relationship between the conditions that existed before the pandemic ensued, how those conditions affected the consequences of the pandemic, and what the pandemic as well as those prior conditions tell us about what types of policies ought to be pursued in the United States to create a more equitable and just society. One of the central objectives that I'd like to highlight at the very beginning here is that we want a policy message to be extracted from the book and from the conference, because we're hopeful that many of the ideas that will be explored during the course of the next 3 days will be ideas that will provide us with a foundation for moving forward with real action that can be taken to try to improve conditions in our country. Now, some of you may know that I am a fairly passionate advocate of reparations for Black Americans whose ancestors were enslaved in the United States, and that in conjunction with Kirsten Mullen, we produced a book that's called From Here to Equality: Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st Century. And one of the policies that we briefly explore in the pages of The Pandemic Divide is the policy of reparations. And it's a particular form of reparations that's the object of the conversation in the Pandemic Divide, which is a project that's designed to eliminate racial wealth differences in the United States, or policies to eliminate the racial wealth gap. And so I'd like to mention a couple of companion studies that have emerged over the course of the past 2 years or so that are studies that examine what would have happened in the United States if we had closed the racial wealth gap. And one of these studies looks specifically at the impact of closing the racial wealth gap on the contagion effects associated with the infectious disease, the coronavirus. And the first of these studies that does exactly that is one that was published in Social Science and Medicine in 2021. And the lead author was Eugene Richardson, who unfortunately is not going to be able to be here with us. But it's Eugene who wrote the postscript to the Pandemic Divide. The Pandemic Divide also includes a foreword by Mary T. Bassett, who is the New York State Public Health Commissioner. And she is one of the co-authors of this article. And Kirsten Mullen and myself are also co-authors. We came to be involved in this project through our engagement with the Lancet Commission on Reparations and Reparative Justice. Another co-author on this particular paper is, sadly, the late Paul Farmer. But that's a big wind-up to a very, very central point about what is the message that's delivered in this article. And the gist of it is the following. Transmission rates of COVID-19 would have been 31 to 68% lower had Black Americans entered into the pandemic with a similar level of wealth as white Americans, okay? 31 to 68% lower. The second paper I'd like to mention is forthcoming in JAMA Open, the Journal of the American Medical Association's open volume. And it is a paper that was produced by a team led by Katie Himmelstein, which demonstrates that if wealth was equal in the United States between blacks and whites, there would be no significant gap in mortality rates between blacks and whites in the United States. So these are two particular studies that look at a very specific way of thinking about reparations and what the consequences would have been for COVID-19 or for health outcomes generally in the United States. The book is a product of editorial work that has been done by Gwen Wright and by Lucas Hubbard and myself, and I'd very much like to hear from the two of them about their thoughts and reflections on the pandemic divide, how COVID increased inequality in America. So thank you. That's the start.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lucas Hubbard, Associate in Research at the Cook Center and co-editor of this volume. Very pleased to see everyone here today, and I'm thrilled to be a part of the Cook Center and this editorial team and this project and all of this extremely important scholarship. I'll be brief because I know we have a book trailer and we want to get Dr. Trotter up here to start sharing some of these important findings. I encourage you as you're here today and over these next couple days to take in these findings and not just keep them to yourselves, because as Dr. Darity was saying, we want policy solutions and we want people to be who are not just here today, but and this is maybe a not representative group. These are, you are all engaged in being cognizant of these issues and well aware of these disparities. So it's important for you to share these findings with your family, with your friends, with the people you talk to on the bus or on the street, and share these and get these ideas into the broader ecosystem, because we need a wider understanding of these very striking disparities. And lastly, as you are here today. If you hear anything that's particularly compelling or you want to share, we do have a hashtag for this event. It's, I believe, Pandemic Divide 2022. Is that right, Maddie? Pandemic Divide 22. So if you hear anything that's extremely compelling and feel obliged to share, please do. Hashtag Pandemic Divide 2022. Without further ado, Dr. Wright, do you have anything you'd like to say?
I think we are ready for our trailer, but also just to mention that the book is kind of divided into 3 areas that we really wanted to focus. With every book, you make decisions about what things to have in and what things that you're not able to do that. One of the areas that we really wanted to include was to examine some of the racism and violence around Asian Americans within the pandemic. So we did not include that, or were not able to include that because we couldn't pull all the scholars together that we wanted for that book. But we will have a presentation that will explore that, and our 2 scholars are here today, and I really want you to focus on that because that is an area that we really wanted to have in the book, but we were not able to include in the book. So the book has like 3 areas, thematic areas. Professor Darity talked about the financial piece, but there is also an education piece. And we saw so clearly the kinds of disparities, technology disparities and other kinds of disparities that were laid bare as a result of COVID-19. And so the other area is health disparities. So we have 3 of those areas, and we hope to explore them fairly deeply within this conference.